All right. Before we begin, I want to remind the committee members and members of the public to follow our code of conduct at meetings. This includes only commenting on the specific agenda item and addressing the entire body. Public speakers will not engage in conversations with the chair, council members, or staff. All members of the committee, staff, and the public are expected to refrain from abusive language. Failure to comply with the code of conduct, which will disturb, disrupt, or impede the orderly conduct, will result in removal from the meeting. This meeting of the Neighborhood Services and Education Committee will now come to order. Can the clerk please call the roll?
Candelas?
Here.
Batra? Duan?
Here.
Vice Chair Ortiz?
Present.
Chair Davis? We have a quorum.
All right, thank you so much. So going to item B, review of the work plan. Do we have anything on that? I don't think so. All right, C, consent calendar. Is that also blank? Yeah. All right. D, reports to committee. Item 1, education strategy and annual report. And I believe we have a presentation.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Vidya Kilambi, and I'm the Division Manager of Education and Learning Pathways with the library. Today, the team and I are very excited to present highlights of our work as part of the Education Strategy Annual Report. We'll take turns presenting today, and I'll start off the presentation with a little bit of the background. In May 2018, City Council unanimously approved the Education and Digital Literacy Strategy, or EDL, to ensure that the city's investment in education and learning would be aligned with intended outcomes and designed educational goals. The EDL structure, which we currently use, focuses on educational attainment areas, or planks, and includes early education, expanded learning, college and career pathways, and digital literacy. In addition, the city's first education policy was approved and adopted in February 2020. Since May 2018, quality standards were developed and adopted in each of the programmatic areas to deepen the work of the EDL strategy. Once the standards were adopted, implementation began with an assessment of each program and development of related improvement plans. This is a continuous process, and we use it to make changes to programs and adapt to community needs. Here is an overview of the program quality adoption and implementation status by plank. Most programs are ranging from at standard to advanced. Programs that are emerging are new to the process. We have a vast number of partners, city departments, local CBOs, school districts, local businesses, and philanthropic partners. Our partners are integral to this work, building communities of practice and increasing our collective impact towards shared goals. We will now provide a quick update on several of our key programs. I will transition the presentation over to Lauren from our partner PRNS department.
Thank you, Vidya. Good afternoon, commissioners and members of the public. My name is Lauren Box, Recreation Superintendent for the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services. I'll be sharing with you the city's early learning and youth programs. Perfect. The City of San Jose is committed to providing high-quality early learning opportunities for children 0 to 5 years of age and their caregivers. This overview highlights the successes and goals of 2 key initiatives: the San Jose Recreation Preschool by the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services, along with the library's early learning programs. In the 2023-2024 school year, the San Jose Recreation Preschool served a 360 unduplicated youth between the ages of 3 to 5, a 25.8% increase in enrollment compared to the previous year. This surge in participation reflects the growing demand for quality early learning education within the community, along with the department's scholarship program. PRNS utilizes the Early Education Quality Standards, or EEQS, assessment tool to measure program quality across their 18 classrooms. These results indicated a substantial improvement, 22% increase in fact, and an overall rating of proficient. Additionally, 83% of San Jose Recreation Preschool teachers were rated as strong, showing a 36% improvement from the pre-assessment. There we go. In the 2023-2024 fiscal year, the library offered more than 3,255 early education programs, reaching 87,314 participants across its 25 branches. This marks a 25% increase in the number of programs and a 24% increase in participation over the previous year. The library's offerings include story time, kindergarten readiness programs, and enrichment activities in the arts and science. The library also used the Early Education Quality Standards, again the EEQS assessment tool, to evaluate storytime programs, which met the proficient standard across 8 key areas. In the 2023-24 caregiver survey, it revealed strong support of the programs with a 93.5% of respondents expressing satisfaction or high satisfaction with program quality. The survey also found that 54.8% of children participating in these programs were toddlers, ages 13 to 35 months of age. In addition to that, 65.3% were not enrolled in other preschool or daycare programs, highlighting the library's critical role in providing accessible early learning experiences. With Rockin' ACES, in this last academic year, PRNS served more than 2,480 unduplicated students through its Recreation of City Kids, or ROC program, at 26 school sites and 1 after-school education and safety, or ACES program. 75% of respondents reported that ROC or ACES programs actively engaged participants in healthy recreation activities and encouraged healthy eating. Additionally, to increase access to the ROC After School program, PRNS has leveraged partnerships with school districts to utilize their Expanded Learning Opportunity Program, or ELOP, dollars and worked with community partners like CEFCU to provide scholarships. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to Amanda.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Amanda Oddie. I'm the College and Career Pathways Coordinator for the library, and for this slide, I'm standing in for my colleague Lizzie Nolan, who oversees expanded learning at the library and our SJ Learns program. San Jose Learns funds after-school programs that provide safe, engaging, and enriching experiences for 773 students across 22 schools at 4 school districts: Alum Rock, Campbell Union Elementary School District, Franklin McKinley, and Luther Burbank. These programs support students' academic growth, social emotional well-being, and skill-building opportunities. An annual external evaluation demonstrates SJ Learns funded programs showed positive impacts, including improvements in math and reading skills, more family involvement, and customized staff training. By partnering with city agencies, community organizations, and families, these programs strengthen student outcomes and follow California standards for quality in expanded learning. Now I'll be spotlighting 4 of the city's college and career focus programs. San Jose Works Youth Jobs Initiative is a partnership between the city's Office of Economic Development, Work to Future, and the San Jose Youth Empowerment Alliance. This program provides youth with employment services and critical life skill instruction. In fiscal year 2023-2024, the San Jose Works program provided subsidized and unsubsidized employment opportunities to a total of 813 youth and young adults. The subsidized program is a paid internship for San Jose youth ages 14 to 18 who meet eligibility requirements, one of which is living in an area with an identified gang presence or opportunity neighborhood. Last year, 82% of participants lived in or within 1 block of an opportunity neighborhood. all subsidized youth were placed in a priority sector and/or demand occupation related to information technology, advanced manufacturing, healthcare, construction and the trades, public service, and business. This last year, 75 youth in the SJ Works program were connected directly with a mentor to support them in their long-term goals. Career Online High School, which provides adults 19 and older with the opportunity to earn an accredited high school diploma and career certificate for free through the library, has 98% of participants identify as Black, Indigenous, people of color, and 98% are also parents. In interviews, prospective students talk about how a diploma will improve their job prospects and how the program will help them make a better life for their family. At the graduation ceremony in August, one of our speakers, who was a 70-year-old grandparent, told the audience, "It's never too late," and shared about the joys of helping her grandchildren with their homework. In the last fiscal year, 57 adults were active in the Career Online High School program, and 28 graduated with a high school diploma and career certificate. Since the writing of the memo, we've tracked additional people completing the program, and as of this week, I'm proud to say we have a total of 198 adults who have graduated through this program. One other point of celebration is that our graduation rate at 74% is the highest among library systems in the state. Based on survey data collected from our partners at the California State Library, 77% of graduates from our library's program aspire to pursue college. In the next year, our team's work plan includes building out strategies to support participants on these next steps along their college and career pathways. The Resilience Corps is a workforce development program for young adults ages 18 through 30 with 2 pathway programs, one managed through the library and another through our Parks and Recreation Department. The library manages the learning pathway with our partners at the Library Foundation, who are here today, serving as the employer of record. Participants gain experience in the expanded learning field working with high-need students in grades K through 8. In academic year 23-24, 42 of 50 participants completed their term of service in the program. They were placed in capacity building roles with the Boys and Girls Club of Silicon Valley, Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County, Mount Pleasant After School Program, Parks and Recreation, and the library, and worked over 21,000 hours with students. 96% of participants in this program identified as Black, Indigenous, people of color, and 72% are first-generation college students, ensuring that these often underserved groups have access to career support and living wages while giving back to their community. Parks and Recreation manages the Climate Change Pathway Program, with the San Jose Conservation Corps and charter schools serving as the employer of record. Participants in this pathway gain experience working on natural resource management projects, critical infrastructure, and landscape management projects. In fiscal year 23-24, 110 of 152 participants completed their term of service in the program and worked over 133,000 hours. 91% of participants in this program identified as Black, Indigenous, people of color. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Ophelia.
Good afternoon, Neighborhood Services Committee members. My name is Ophelia Medina, and I am the branch manager at the Hillview Library and also the manager of the San Jose Public Library Adult Literacy and ESL Services. This is the first time we are reporting on adult literacy and ESL as part of the education strategy. The library's ESL and adult literacy programs support the goals of adult learners in San Jose that want to learn English and/or improve their reading and writing skills. We offer general conversation clubs, ESL programs, classes for different levels, a variety of literacy programs, and one-on-one tutoring services. For fiscal year 24-25, staff will focus efforts on developing and offering ESL conversation clubs and programs for true beginner level 0 adult learners to ensure that they have an opportunity to develop sufficient skills to participate in additional ESL literacy and learning opportunities in San Jose. In addition, staff will be focusing efforts to support and implement for the Children's Youth Services Master Plan at Hillview and Seven Trees, and continue to work on a priority work area working group to foster safe, clean, and connected communities. Thank you, and I'm going to pass this over to Vidya now.
For next steps, we'll continue implementation of the quality standards and continuous quality improvement process, work with our Youth Commission to identify priority strategies for improving college and career-focused outcomes, align city program outcomes with the Children and Youth Services Master Plan, and roll out a reporting dashboard using participation data, evaluations, and outcomes for city education programs. This concludes our presentation, and we are now available to answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll take questions from the public first, or comments from the public first.
We have no public comment.
Okay. We'll go to Councilmember Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I just want to really just mention how much I appreciate the amazing work being led by the library department in enhancing the education of all of our residents in our city. I think I was really excited to hear about I think you said a grandmother that that graduated. So really, you know, there's no age limit to education. And especially at a time where broader education infrastructure is still recovering from the pandemic. So it's good to know that if people go to their city, they go to their library, they can count on these type of services. It's also great to see such a robust improvement in program participation, almost really across the board from all the different programs that you guys have been initiating. I do have two questions, so I wanted to follow up on any progress in our ability to track our grade level proficiency program outcomes, especially in math or in reading. Has there been any ability to track that?
Within our San Jose Learns programs, we do track.
You could lean a little bit closer to the microphone, sorry.
With our San Jose Learns programs, we are able to track that. We noticed that in the last fiscal year, there was a band increase in both reading and math skills from between the fall assessments and the spring assessments.
Okay. How much was that improvement?
One level, one band.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, it's good to know that we're making improvement. Thank you. But is there any way to track, are those the same students, or is it a different group of students?
I think it's the same group of students, but I can get back to you
Okay,
on that.
thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Additionally, I was wondering if we could speak to, I saw some of the programs had data on like zip codes, and then I think it was the high school program where you had mentioned that a large percentage of them lived in a gang-impacted area. Can you just talk about like what type of outreach we're doing through the Workforce Development Program or the Resilience Corps program to like maybe foster youth or gang-impacted youth, like intentional outreach to those populations?
Absolutely. So for the SJ Works program, for the subsidized program, vast majority, and I'm not sure if my colleague is here, yes, if not all, are referred into the subsidized program, yes, okay. Through our partners in the Youth Empowerment Alliance who work with the best funded agencies, also referred through Opportunity Youth Academy and other community-based organizations that serve and are able to help us connect with those high-need populations. For the Resilience Corps program, both pathways are funded through the state's Youth Service Corps program, which part of their eligibility requirements include specific criteria that identify young people who have barriers to employment. So for our library program, living in or being from a low resource census tract is a qualifier to be able to engage in that program. Does that respond to your question?
Great. I appreciate this. The way I look at this is, it's a way for us to provide wraparound support services to our many school districts who are underfunded, who are closing schools, who are being impacted. And, really, if we're not spending these dollars, if we're not intentional about these dollars as a city, we will be spending them anyway later in life when they don't have education attainment, when they can't get a job, and if they're unfortunately, God forbid, homeless or incarcerated. So the way I see it is it's much more better to give the youth the services now than unfortunately to try to react to negative outcomes of our system. So just really appreciate you guys. Thank you for your work, and yeah, look forward to the future presentations.
Acknowledging to your part of the question about outreach to populations like foster youth. For the Resilience Corps program, we also are very strategic about making sure that we're connecting with those community-based organizations that serve those populations, so that when there is a new recruitment, as there is now, opportunity, that those young people have priority access to that information.
That's great. And I move to accept the report.
Thank you. Councilmember Dewan?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, staff. I cannot say enough how wonderful work that you guys have done, from supporting the very young to the very old and our underserved community. And I love to see the number that keep going up. I like to see more, but of course that takes a lot more resource, finance, and how do we support that, right? And so a few of the questions that I have is, I know it's gone up to so many percentage. What is our goal for next year? To boost that up, double the amount? And how do we implement that to get more participation?
Thank you, Councilmember, for your question. I think overall we're continuously looking to improve our programs and services. Some of that is predicated off of parent and caregiver survey, and then also the thoughtful questions that you all pose to us as part of this annual report. So some of that comes from training and best practices, I'll say, within the early education field, and also with our counterparts in the library and expanded learning efforts. So it's a multitude of things that continue to push the percentage up, basically. Hopefully that answers your question in video. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add.
Well, thank you. Is there room to expand this program, given the popularity, especially the early education?
If you could clarify which particular program you're referencing?
The early education?
For the library or for the Department of Parks and Recreation?
For the library.
I'll defer to Vidya.
I will ask R.S. Sally, who's here, who is our early education manager, to respond to that question.
Thank you so much, Council Member. I'm Araceli Delgado-Ortiz, the Early Education Manager with the San Jose Public Library. So currently we have our curriculum set for the year. We are expanding our programming. We actually are adding a new program called We Create that is based on STEM learning. We also have our We Learn, which is reading-based. We love math and we love art. So we are continuously adding our programming curriculum and to the menu. Right now, I believe we're programming up about 3% from last year, and so we will continue to add new programming based on community feedback. The community has shared with us that they're looking for play dates right now, and so more information on that will come in the next year.
Thank you. And both the PRNS and library, is there a minimum or maximum income that a family can qualify for a lot of these programs? I just want to make sure that our constituent understand that they can certain parameters.
Really great question. So I'll speak on behalf of the San Jose Public Library. All the programs we offer at SJPL are free, so access to all at 25 of our locations. We even have programs at satellite locations as well. So a lot of the family resource centers that are run and supported by First Five, we do have a presence at those locations as well, and all the programming is free.
Thank you very much, and continue the great work. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the report. I really appreciate both PRNS and library and all the programs that you offer to our residents. I have a few questions. For the Resilience Corps, the 2 pathways, do the participants get to choose which pathway they want to participate in, or how is that chosen?
Yes, so the recruitments for each pathway are managed separately because both of the pathways have different employers of record and different processes that they follow for recruitment. At the library, we'll be piloting a new pathway focused on IT and provide workforce development experiences for young people who are interested in IT and computer science pathways in particular. And for that one, because it is going to have the same employer of record as our learning pathway program, the initial recruitment stage of the application will be the same, and then we will, in the interview process, identify which pathway young people might be best suited to, and certainly their interest and input would be very relevant to that selection.
Okay, and I noticed the library pathway was much smaller than the one with the Conservation Corps. Are they both at capacity?
No. So I can speak to the library. For our last recruitments, we've had over 200 applicants for 30 positions. We're opening up a recruitment for an additional almost 30 positions. And the difference in funding is based on the allocation of the overall grant to our two departments. And the work experiences are also different in terms of the length of the work experiences, and the participant wages are also different within the budget.
Okay. Then I noticed there are a couple of programs that had a decrease in percentage of participation. The expanded learning with PRNS had a 4.3% decrease in participation, and then there was another one, the San Jose Works, had a 2% decrease. Can you talk about whether those decreases were what we think there were a result of?
Our colleague Ruby Carrasco, who oversees the San Jose Works program, will speak to the San Jose Works element of the question.
Good afternoon. Are you referring to the retention part, or?
I didn't see retention. So on the slides, so the slide 13 for San Jose Works.
Yeah, Ruby,
on the top.
The slide indicates that there is a slight decrease in the overall number of participants served in the San Jose Works program from last fiscal year to this fiscal year.
So we're still pending a cohort for this year of about 15 youth, so it would make up our 375 number. Our goal every year since 2018 has always been to hit 375 for the subsidized. So we're still on target. We have a pending cohort that we're going to be partnering up with Justice Engaged Youth Undocumented as well, and for more regular work experience as well.
Okay, and then if I missed it or don't remember from the memo, do you have completion rates in the memo?
We do.
And how are they?
They've all been 93% and higher.
Okay,
yeah.
great.
The average about in the last, I want to say in the last 10 years, our average of retention has always been between 85 to 90% or higher than that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then for PRNS? For the rock and, I don't know, do you call it ACEs? Okay. That's 11.
Thank you so much for the question, Councilmember. I'd have to get back to you with specifics, but overall, we've continued to have our Resilience Corps staff supporting both ROC and ACEs. That number does kind of fluctuate based off enrollment and staff capacity to provide that one-to-one coaching and mentorship when they're placed in our programs in particular. But I can definitely follow back up with the commission on more specifics if you like.
Yeah, it would be helpful to know. I'm wondering if it was on our side that there was a decrease in participation, like in slots available. And I think Councilmember Dewan was kind of asking around the same question. Is there a decrease in slots available, or was there a decrease in take-up of, participation? And if there was a decrease in participation, was it because of a decrease in availability of scholarships? That would have been that's like everything I want to know.
For sure. Our division manager, House Manager Bird, can answer.
Thank you. Good afternoon, House Manager, Division Manager for PRNS, specifically for the Recreation Division. Part of that decrease is attributed to loss of some of the schools in the Oak Grove School District. The Oak Grove School District did go in-house with their after-school providing excuse me, after-school care. So we lost some of those sites in the Oak Grove School District, which resulted in a decrease in our participation overall.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. So it's exogenous. Thank you. And then on the next steps, the dashboard that you mentioned, what's the timeline for the dashboard?
By the end of this fiscal year, we should have something. We already have an internal dashboard that we use, but we are still working on the publicly available one.
Thanks. And then just because Ann knows I'm going to ask a wonky question. When you talk about the SJ Learns in the fall and interim assessments for both ELA and math, are those matched sets of kids? So kids who took both tests?
I think so.
Ann's nodding. Okay. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure that I understand how it's working. Okay. Do we have targets for those program outcomes? I know this is fairly new data and new times that we've done this, but do we have targets for the percentage of students that will show that growth?
I don't think we have specific targets, but we can definitely assign some.
I know it's new stuff, so probably just wanting to get a lay of the land first. That makes sense. All right, I see no other hands up. So I think we're ready for the vote. Thanks. Thank you. And that passes unanimously. And we can move on to item D2, the Park Impact Ordinance and Park Dedication Ordinance Fee and Capital Improvement Program Annual Report. Raymond is going to kick us off.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Raymond Costantino, the Deputy Director of our Capital Improvement Program Division within PRNS, and I'm here joined with Sarah Sellers, our Division Manager. Before I get started, I just want to make one little announcement. There was an error in the staff memo that was posted, and we found out this morning. It was on table 7 on page 15 of the staff memo. We corrected it, and a supplemental memorandum was posted late this morning. So you should have the updated exhibit for table 7. Great. All right, so I'm just going to get started then. So today I'll be presenting on the PRNS annual report and on the Park Impact Ordinance and the Parkland Dedication Ordinance fees, also known as the PIO-PDO or the Park Trust Fund. And I'll also be reporting on the Capital Improvement Program for fiscal year 2023-24. The annual report on the PDO-PIO fee collections informs the NSC committee and the community regarding developer-related fee revenue collections and its use. The annual status report on the PRNS Capital Improvement Program, CIP for short, summarizes the use of those fees paired with other resources to implement the PRNS Capital Program. The report also provides an opportunity for the NSC to review the PRNS Capital Program, for staff to highlight significant projects and strategic planning efforts for parks, trails, and community center improvements. The department oversees $410 million in funded projects over the CIP's 5-year period from 2025 through 2029 to plan, design, rehabilitate, or construct new parks, trails, community centers, and other recreational facilities. This report provides an overview and update on the key capital improvement projects funded by these fees, which were completed or started in fiscal year 2023-24, as well as those advancing forward in fiscal year 24-25. This report on the CIP provides an overview and status of funding sources for capital projects, including internal sources like the PDO, PIO, CNC tax funds, and Measure P, as well as external sources, including grants at the local, state, and federal levels, as well as FEMA and Cal OES reimbursements. For context, the department manages approximately 3,600 acres of land, which includes over 2,000 acres of developed parks, trails, and community centers. This slide is an inventory of these park facilities and community infrastructure that we manage citywide. Our park system has 215 neighborhood parks, community and regional parks as well. Those parks include numerous sports facilities, sports fields, and courts, including pickleball, tennis, basketball, and bocce ball, as well as 7 skate parks and 2 BMX parks. We also have numerous play facilities, including almost 300 playgrounds, 17 dog parks, and 6 swimming pools. Our city also offers 21 community gardens citywide and 65 miles of recreational trails. We also manage major attractions like Happy Hollow Park and Zoo, San Jose Family Camp, and the Japanese Friendship Garden, to name a few of them. In our current 5-year capital improvement program for fiscal year 25-29, we have approximately 200 existing park projects that total $410 million for the 5-year period. This includes park, trail, and community center projects. A snapshot of some of the upcoming projects includes 8 playground renovations, 2 new dog parks, additional sports court improvements, almost 12 new acres of new developed parkland, 1 mile of paved trails, and at community centers it also includes 4 new HVAC replacements and 2 roof replacement projects. In regards to the PDO, PIO revenue, which we are required to report based on the state legislation called the Mitigation Fee Act, last fiscal year, 23-24, we collected $15.4 million in PDO, PIO fees, plus an additional $6.5 million in interest from the fund, for a total of $21.9 million. This base year, it shows that expenditures equaled revenues, which is not the case every year. This slide also shows that what was collected in prior fiscal years, $24.3 million in fiscal year 21-22, and $15.4 million in fiscal year 22-23. Another large source of funding for park capital projects and maintenance is the construction and conveyance tax, which consists of 2 types of revenue generated by the city. One is the construction tax levied on most types of construction projects, and the second is a conveyance tax levied on real estate transfers. Of that tax, or that combined tax, 64% is dedicated towards PRNS. And in fiscal year 23-24, we received $38.8 million in actual revenue compared to the initial estimate, which was $35 million. In comparison, in prior years, it was substantially lower in comparison to prior years, it was substantially lower due to the decrease in real estate sales and construction activity. You can also see here that the city received $64.5 million in fiscal year 21-22 and $37.9 million in fiscal year 22-23. This slide, here we go, next slide. This next slide provides a snapshot of all the CNC allocations, including central, citywide, and council district funds, which total $85.8 million. This is what we have in our bank accounts, so to speak, to support approved projects and is not specific to one specific year. The breakdown includes $58 million for specific project allocations, $9.6 million for ongoing allocations, $14.1 million for staffing costs, and $3.4 million for park yards, for a grand total of $85 million. There are a few other sources of funding worth highlighting. The first one is grant funding, and this includes grants at the local, state, and federal levels. Some of the sources include VTA Measure B, Open Space Authority, Proposition 68, that's State Parks Grant, County of Santa Clara All-Inclusive Playground Grants, Caltrans Clean California Program Grants, and then also Active Transportation Program Grants. In the last year, we were awarded or confirmed the following grants. Actually, I'll just go back. We were awarded this list of grants that we show in the bottom of the slide. That includes Coyote Creek Trail, Guadalupe River Trail, Mariposa Park, the all-inclusive playground at Emma Prush, and Coyote Creek, Mayberry to Empire. We also have active and upcoming projects that are grant funded, including also another all-inclusive playground at Almaden Lake Park, Coyote Creek Trail from Mayberry to Empire, Coyote Creek Trail from Felon to Tully. Some other upcoming projects will be Coyote Creek Trail from Watson Park to Julian, Guadalupe River Trail from Branham to Chenoweth, and then 5 Wounds Trail. In November 2000, voters approved Measure P bond initiative, which provided $228 million to expand the city of San Jose's park infrastructure. To date, 89 of the 90 original projects have been completed. The one remaining bond-funded project is the Columbus Park Soccer Facility, which is on the current work plan to be completed. Last source of funding I will highlight is FEMA and Cal OES flood reimbursement. This primarily pertains to the 2017 disaster flood events, where we front-funded repairs and improvements using commercial paper, and then are reimbursed by FEMA and Cal OES. In the past year, we have submitted and received reimbursements for $1.1 million. Future projects include the Penitencia Creek Road in Alum Rock Park in Council District 4. Transitioning over to the annual status report on PRNS Capital Improvement Program for fiscal year 23-24, which summarizes the use of different funds to implement the PRNS capital projects. This past fiscal year, we completed 16 major capital projects, 118 minor capital projects. We delivered 11.5 acres of new developed parkland, as well as 3 linear miles of new trails. We also implemented 7 new playground renovations that will be listed on the slide. This part of the presentation provides a snapshot of some of our completed major and minor capital projects listed by council district. So here you will see different projects completed in 23-24, including the new park at Newberry Park, the new Newberry Park, D3, Payne Ave, Friendship Park, D1, Almaden Lake Amphitheater, Reno, D10, Pickleball Court renovation at Groesbeck Park, D8, Emma Prush Farm, all-inclusive playground, D5. This next slide, we're showcasing Dana Rock Park new playground, D2, Meadow Fair Park new playground, D8, Shady Oaks basketball court renovation, D2, Highlandville Park, that's a new park, D3, Mariposa Park, also new park, D7. What's that? Thank you. And then here on this next slide, showcasing Pellier Park, it's a new park, D3, La Ragione Park playground renovation, D7, Ryland Park renovation, D3, Wallenberg tennis courts renovation, D6, Flickinger Park refresh project, D4. This next slide showcasing Butcher Dog Park renovation, D9, Emma Prush ADA improvements, D5. Mercado and Brazzoni Parks, these are both new parks, D4. And the last slide here, projects completed at the Thank You America Monument Vietnamese Heritage Garden, D7. Murdoch Playground renovation, D1. And then Alviso Park Fitness Station improvements, D4. Almost to the end here. So this next slide, here's a list of our projects in progress. I won't go over them all, but I will give you a sense of our workload. We currently have 94 active major capital projects and 109 active minor capital projects. And so that concludes my presentation on both these annual reports. Staff is available for any related questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to public comment first.
There is no public comment.
Okay. To my colleagues, Councilmember Candelas.
Thank you, Chairwoman. No, first of all, thank you, Raymond and Sarah, for your presentation. You know, I think it's timely, especially our conversation yesterday on my capital budget program coming in the next year. I know that the difficulty associated with the financial constraints of the reality of what we have to do, especially when it comes to tackling critical issues and that balance with, you know, the portfolio of parks, community centers, and miles of trails we have in the city inventory. Especially the preemptive statement, Raymond, on the Table 7 update, because I was I initially saw that Powell Stadium the turf replacement for $250,000, and I was like, what? I thought it was a bargain, but then I saw the supplemental and it was $5 million. Okay, that sounds about right. But thank you. And so, you know, I in the presentation, I appreciate staff's work with regards to highlighting the grants and other dollars to supplement the work, or the grants, the dollars associated with the park impact fees and the parkland dedication fees, which is critical for us tackling the work. Curious, last year, I know staff submitted an application to the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority for Lake Cunningham. And, you know, needless to say, it was a poorly rated application, if you remember. But I was able to get us $50,000 going to that meeting. Where is that listed? Is that listed anywhere in this report? Or because I know you listed other grants in there, and I'm curious as to why that wasn't listed in the report.
We didn't list everything in this report. So some of the smaller amounts of funding or might not be listed in this report. Sarah, do you have any more detail on that?
And that's accurate. I'll just say that we did just work with OSA to secure that grant, and we are looking to put that in motion quickly.
Okay, perfect. No, and good. I'm glad. But you know, I figured, you know, if the way the memo was structured, I figured it'd be, you know, something to highlight the partnership given, you know, the regional parks asset. But thank you for that. And let's see. Another question, I guess, for staff looking prospectively, given, you know, the passage of Proposition 4, and you know the $10 billion in new funding, as the program and as the regulations for that prop are firmed up, I would hope that we are being proactive and the administration is being proactive with our IGR staff into helping shape those regs that look positive for us as a city to be able to collect on some of those, especially, you know, restoring or improving Lake Cunningham, which is one of the subsets in that prop. So I would hope that staff is looking at that to be able to supplement and or submit a competitive application to make us eligible for some of those dollars. Although I know that climate change dollars, those climate change dollars are very broad and specific to certain categories. I think if we're creative enough, especially with regards to how the program is set up now in Sacramento, I think it would benefit us tremendously. Okay, and then the next question I have is there was a mention about the reserves and the policy we have with regards to reserves and the creation of reserves for these big, you know, infrastructure projects that require these multi-year investments. So maybe could you provide a little bit of background on how staff formulates those recommendations for how we allocate money for those reserves, and how do we come up with the right amount given the extraordinary costs of any project happening nowadays?
I'll let Sarah start with that response, and then I'll add to it if I need to.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of different pieces of criteria that go into it. One is timelines. How quickly will we get to construction and how quickly will we need that reserve? The other challenge is that since funding fluctuates every year, we can't predict the future. And that's been one of our largest obstacles, is we have a lot of really expensive pieces of infrastructure, but we don't have the resources to match the needs. So we have pools, we have synthetic fields, we have community centers. And ideally, we would say, okay, well, if we have 10 years to get to $1 million, we would save 100,000 every year, and it would be very logical, very straightforward. But we don't have that system available to us. So when we see opportunities for large amounts of money that we could stash into the reserve to build up to it, we like to do that to continuously build it, because in other years we may find that there's not any funding to build the reserve. So it's really this game of trying to look into the future, trying to understand timelines, trying to figure out how we could keep our funds from going stagnant and depreciating. And then the other little tricky part is staff capacity. If we're funding certain types of projects, there's quite a backlog, and so we try not to get money kind of going stagnant in that regard too. So at times we'll shift to minor projects that we can deliver faster, understanding that public works workload is pretty intense right now. They're not able to push projects right now due to the shift in their focus to housing. So we have to account for that too, to make sure that we're not funding major projects where they're going to get stuck in the system and sit. So when you put all these pieces together, we're trying to create this roadmap for how we build reserves, we keep the team moving, we're aware of capacities, what we can move quickly, and it's all a very delicate dance that we're trying to figure out. So that's kind of the gist of it.
Totally, and it makes sense, especially trying to figure out how not to add more projects to the workload of our public works team, to also balancing, because you essentially stock that money away and you stash it for better years, and hopefully it creates some openings in the workflow, right? And you get through the list, and so I want to make sure that we're balancing, because that comes at a trade-off, projects in the city that also move the needle, because we get a lot of complaints from residents saying, hey, the Lake Cunningham bathrooms look like prison bathrooms. And so, how do we make sure that we're tackling these, and I see that we're 20% there on Lake Cunningham's bathrooms, which is great. But, if that means maybe less money for a reserve to shift more money into doing a project, then I just implore staff, and this is something that we talked about yesterday, but I hope we would be a little bit more open to that, and more willing to take risks on getting things done, to just move the needle on some of our parks. Sorry, Raymond, were you going to say something?
We appreciate that input. I mean, we're all about trying to get things done and finding new ways to get things done, so we appreciate that input.
No, thank you. I don't, like I said, it's a tough job that you all have, given the resources and the constraints, and not to mention the pressures that you get from staff on trying to, or from our offices trying to see things done. And I know it's not easy, but I appreciate the work that you all do, and honestly, keep up the good work. You guys are handling things, and I know we've broken grounds on whether it's Thompson Creek, Meadow Fair, or Bogini Park. I'm optimistic. Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank staff for their report. These conversations are timely, as the council member said, and based off of our recent conversation around potential capital improvements in my district. The first 2 years, it was, having these conversations, it was kind of depressing just looking at where our parks were on the east side, but I do feel confident that we're moving in the right direction, and I just want to thank you guys for being committed and having these tough conversations with me, because I know you have it with 9 other council members as well. And I know I got the memo that's moving forward around the conversation around parks and funding and how to identify other avenues to fund our parks. Because at the end of the day, these capital dollars that come from construction just aren't equitably distributed throughout the city, and it's obvious that you go to some parks and you go to others, and just the quality is not the same. And if we just sit back and await for us finally getting the funds there, nothing's really going to happen. And so, but as mentioned, I'm feeling confident we're moving in the right direction. I want to thank, yourself, Raymond, Angel, Rios, and other individuals from PRNS. We had that conversation regarding Overfelt Gardens Park and the Chinese Cultural Gardens. I think that's a great opportunity for us to get some investment that isn't from the construction fees. And I also see another opportunity around Powell Stadium and the various different sports teams here in the area. To convene potential partners to have that conversation. I also want to just mention I appreciate you including the grants in the conversation, because we all know that the construction fees aren't enough. Have we ever pursued grants from the federal level around parks or from the state level around parks? I know we've done that for like transportation and trails, but specifically for parks.
Great question. We are actively searching for external money. So recently we applied and were awarded the ORLAP grant. That is the, see if I can get it right, Outdoor Recreation Legacy Partnership Program. And that was one where it's a 2-step process. You submit to the state first. If they like your application, you move forward to the federal level. So that is a federal source of money that then trickles down to the state. So we are looking at that program very seriously, because there is the opportunity to get large grant amounts. Now, the key challenge, and this is something I was trying to highlight just to plant seeds, in order for us to go after grants, we have to have all of the money already in our bank. So you have to have money to get money. And this is our largest obstacle, one that I don't quite understand, which creates a serious challenge with equity. And this is also one reason that I find building reserves is actually a strength, because if it's within your district, you can leverage that as your source to front the funds to pay for the grant. And when you get those reimbursements back, then you could feed it back into the project. So we're trying to find partners, strategies, external sources, and we really appreciate the involvement that we've had with a lot of you all to make phone calls to congressmen and help push things through and find partners, because we're still kind of restrained with what tools we have. And we would absolutely love to go after more external funds, but that is our largest limitation, is you have to have that money up front.
Okay, no, thank you so much for that. And just want to give you guys a heads up, with the discretionary funds, I am thinking about potential pickleball courts. And so want to figure out how to get some of those, or maybe at least one in my district, maybe convert an existing tennis ball court into something. So I'll be sending that your guys' way. So thank you so much.
Councilmember Dewan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, staff. It's amazing, 215 neighborhoods, park, 65 miles of trails, and God knows how many sport fields, and 41 neighborhood community center. I don't know how you guys do it. That's pretty incredible. But I do have a quick question for you. On page 8 of your memorandum, Caltrans Clean California Program, there is $296 million in fund. And I know that Mariposa Park, we did get a $500,000 reimbursement on it. How do we leverage that so that way we can get more reimbursement? Obviously with the saving, and we have to have the money first, but how do we leverage to use some of that money into our parks?
Well, this is the Mariposa Park. Obviously, it's one that's been completed, right? So,
yes.
And we got the reimbursements, I believe, for that park. But basically, I mean, in addition to what Sarah said, you can also, with some grants, you have matching funds. And so you also, if you have the matching funds, you can look into the grant in that aspect. And also just figuring out how to be competitive with some of the grants. So our team basically looks at different grants all the time and tries to figure out if there's projects that basically fit the requirements of the grant and that are also competitive towards the grant. So.
And I know that we're always short of funding and resource, and I think, I would believe that PRNS have a full-time grant writer to help with this process.
We wish we did, but we don't. And so that's one of the challenges as well, is that right now, at least within the capital division, basically staff takes on these grant projects as extra work to research, and basically if it is successful, if it is a competitive grant, and apply for the grant. So they take it on in addition to the regular workload. So we don't have a dedicated grant manager to pursue these grant opportunities. We're doing it right now just with our current staff capacity. So that's one of the challenges and the limitations, and we are trying to figure out if there's a way, with these difficult economic times, if we can squeeze out some funding for something like that. But so that is one of the things that we are looking into. I think it would be beneficial in general, but right now we do it with current staff capacity.
Thank you. I think it's be a great investment if we have a professional grant writer that can leverage millions of dollars versus the, let's say about $100,000 in salary. So that way we can get a lot of our park, taken care of. Thank you very much, and continue with the good work that you guys do. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Really appreciate the report, and I think you got enough questions for this afternoon. Did anybody make a motion to accept the report?
I'll move approval of staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, thanks. All right, we're ready for a vote. Great, that motion passes unanimously, and we will move on to item D3 is the Focus Area Service Team Pilot Program Status Report. And it looks like Rachel and Chris.
Okay. Good afternoon. I am Rachel Roberts, Deputy Director of Code Enforcement, and I'll be presenting the Focus Area Service Team, or FAST, Pilot Program Status Report. And with me today is Chris Burton, our Director of PBCE. Okay, so in the mayor's budget message for fiscal year 23-24, the city manager received direction to work with code enforcement and other city departments to address blight more quickly. Staff presented to City Council in June of 2023 the proposed FAST pilot program model in response to that direction. And then in August 2023, staff began implementation of the program. The program was centered on the goal to explore a proactive, expedited blight enforcement model across 6 focus areas, utilizing 3 main components: targeted outreach and education, proactive inspection, and expedited enforcement. The FAST areas were selected based on prior year blight complaint data, with these areas representing 28% of that total. The program ran from August 2023 to July 2024 and cost just over $305,000. So there's a typo on that slide. It should say $305,000, and required 3,072 staff hours across 13 staff members. So this slide shows kind of deeper dive into our 6 focus areas, which we refer to as our FAST areas, shown here on the map. And we provided a brief description in the blue boxes. So these areas span across 6 council districts, including council districts 2, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 10, and included a mix of both commercial and residential properties. The program was implemented in 3 phases, with phase 1 including FAST areas 1 and 2, phase 2 including FAST areas 3 and 4, and phase 3 comprised of FAST areas 5 and 6. And in total, the program serviced 11,368 parcels. So for each phase of the program, we followed the same process, with the exception of phase 1, which did not include a warning notice step. This step was actually added to be implemented in phase 2 and 3 after feedback from the community and our council. Each phase began with an outreach and education component, including a preliminary dashboard survey to get a baseline of the conditions in each area, and also document conditions that must be present for a minimum of 72 hours before they could be considered in violation. Staff also conducted a significant amount of outreach and education, including a letter and flyer that outlined program details, provided dates of the proactive inspections, and resources to proactively achieve compliance and avoid a citation. After the outreach and education step, the proactive inspections began, and those properties found in violation received a warning notice and subsequent compliance inspections in this part of the process. If still in violation, following that stage, properties entered into the 3rd step of the process, our enforcement step, in which citations were issued and re-inspections continued to be conducted until compliance was reached, or we reached the issuance of a 3rd citation. Each case averaged approximately 2.9 inspections from open to case closure. By the program's end, only 29 of the properties remained in violation after receiving their 3rd citation. So as part of the outreach and education component, we took this opportunity to launch new efforts in terms of outreach. So this slide here features a few of those different methods and tools that we utilized in the FAST pilot program. Staff created multilingual videos in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, Chinese, and Tagalog, to name a few, that presented the violations being targeted in the FAST program and ways that residents could correct them. Also new for code enforcement was the use of social media platforms such as Nextdoor, Facebook, Instagram, and X, and paid targeted ads on these platforms to promote awareness and engagement about the program. Staff also created a dedicated web page which featured these resources and mailed a program informational flyer to all 11,368 parcel owners or their occupants. Lastly, staff held virtual community meetings which provided Spanish interpretation and multilingual content, and attended in-person community meetings with the Downtown Association, Alum Rock Village Committee, Hyde Park, and Mount Pleasant neighborhoods. Another key component of the FAST program was a conscious effort to expand and leverage our interdepartmental collaborations. During the course of the FAST pilot, staff made 61 proactive referrals through the San Jose 311 app for illegal dumping or abandoned vehicles observed in the public right-of-way during the FAST inspections. Staff coordinated dumpster day events with Beautify SJ held during phase 2 and phase 3 to foster compliance ahead of the proactive inspections and enforcement. Staff worked to raise awareness and promote resources, distributing over 3,000 flyers in conjunction with the dumpster day events, highlighting not only the FAST program, but also the graffiti removal program and free junk pickup. In total, 462 cases were opened for violations during the FAST pilot, with 434 of those properties brought into compliance, for a compliance rate of 94%. True to our current model, data showed that outreach and education had the biggest impact on compliance, with 61% of cases being resolved through outreach and education or issuance of a warning notice. The remaining 33% reached compliance following a citation, which ranged in amount from $100 to $250. However, 63% of those that did receive a citation were in compliance after the first citation, indicating that more or increased fines may not necessarily have the effect in reaching compliance for most residents. To further examine the effectiveness of the program, we looked at how the proactive expedited FAST pilot performed compared to our normal operations in areas such as the overall process timeline, number of cases opened, the case duration, which is the time from the case being opened till closure, the compliance rates after a citation issuance, and the number of inspections required to reach compliance. Looking at this data table, we can see that FAST outperformed our normal model with the exception of the number of inspections required, which is likely in part to the preliminary survey inspection. However, these outcomes cannot be considered without looking at three influential factors. The first being that the targeted outreach and education campaign that was implemented for FAST beyond our normal outreach practices. Two would be the allocation of the dedicated resources that focus solely on this proactive and expedited process of responding to blight. And thirdly, it would be the high volume caseload and variety of case types under our normal operations that inspectors are responsible for, which does impact our process timelines. So looking at the effectiveness of the various outreach and education tools implemented with the program, staff found that social media was very impactful, with the paid targeted ads being the most effective. We saw 64,000 impressions or views just with the targeted ads alone, with 105,000 views overall. We also saw an increase in our webpage activity with various outreach components and steps in the process, such as media coverage, following the mailing of the informational letters, and also following citation issuance. We also saw that in-person outreach conducted along with the dumpster day events was also valuable. Overall, the community welcomed the information and education, and 80% of our survey respondents expressed a desire for the program to continue. Taking a look at the cost to run the pilot from start to finish, we expended just over the $305,000, as mentioned previously, with $278,000 in personal costs and approximately $27,000 in non-personal costs. This figure does not, however, reflect costs of the support received from the other city departments. Looking ahead at the table on the right, we estimated the cost of a minimum staffing low-cost model and the service level that could be provided with that model. Under the low-cost model, staff estimated we could service approximately 4 to 5 areas or 9,000 parcels annually for about $195,000, including overhead. This would require a team of 2 inspectors, a supervisor, public information rep, and support staff committing an estimated 2,579 staff hours to perform the FAST operations. Opportunities we have identified for implementation from the lessons we've learned from implementing this program spanned across many of the important and valuable things that we saw with regards to outreach and education, interdepartmental collaboration, community partnerships, and analysis and evaluation. We will be looking at opportunities to implement more targeted outreach and expand our educational resources about blight. We will be looking at ways we can continue to our interdepartmental collaboration and promote resources that could be of help and support to our customers. We will look to expand more community partnerships and take a more proactive approach in conducting our outreach, and then continue our analysis and evaluation of violations, compliance rates, etc., by geographic areas or by neighborhoods. And then lastly, there's still many more things that we have to learn where we feel we've just scratched the surface with this program. So some of those areas we would like to investigate and learn more about include why some violations are more common in certain areas than others, and the racial and social equity factors that may be at play. We also want to continue to explore resources that we can offer and tailor those resources based on the needs of the specific communities. And then also taking a look at how we can work with other departments to provide more support in a proactive way, all with the goal of supporting residents and promoting compliance with more strategic service delivery. And with that, it concludes our presentation.
Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak on this item?
We have no public comment.
Okay. I will turn it over to my colleagues. Councilmember Ortiz.
First off, just want to thank you for this program. Really, all the items that we've discussed tonight on this committee, well, this afternoon on this committee, have had a great positive impact on District 5. And just looking at, the numbers that you shared, it's blatant that District 5 and really, major portions of our district, I'm sure District 7, District 3, parts of District 8, need this type of service, and the issue is, of course, the funding. But I'm encouraged, to see the results of the program, and especially the high compliance rate that comes after proactive enforcement and outreach. And that just goes to show us that, when there is a lot of attention to kind of our harder to reach districts, our harder to reach property owners, when they do have the opportunity, they will comply. And they will listen to our city when our city takes action. And I think that it has, undeniably resulted in a more pleasant district for my residents. I do just have a quick, just 2 questions. So first, outside of this FAST program, which was great, does our code enforcement normally do any proactive identifying of code violations, or is it all just reactive to complaints? Like, are people driving out there and seeing anything, or?
Yes, council member. So we do some proactive work that tends to show up in our special programs, so our vacant building and storefront program, our tobacco retail license, off-sale alcohol, multiple housing is a hugely proactive because we're doing those routine inspections. But for general code, which is the core program that responds to blight, we are not doing proactive for blight currently. Okay,
all right. Well, definitely it seems if there's going to be any movement in some of our neighborhoods, there needs to be some sort of proactive implementation of a strategy. I wanted to ask, what do you feel, what does staff feel is the best next steps to build upon this success, and what sort of direction would you need from us to make sure that we have this sort of proactive enforcement that our neighborhoods need?
Yeah, thanks, Councilmember. Chris Burton, Director of Planning, Building Code Enforcement. For us, this was, it's a pilot. It's been a really good experience to take a sort of deep look at the process and kind of think about how we can use some of these aspects more broadly in our general work, but then also what's the opportunity around targeting some of these services in the future. I think our next steps is to really wrap this into the re-engineering work that's coming early next year back to City Council. We'll have a study session on January 21st, and sort of seeing this aligned with everything else we've got going on, I think it'll sort of help you kind of understand the opportunities that exist here and how we can take parts of this and move it into our everyday, and then how we can look to expanding this service in the future on an as-needed basis.
Okay. All right, well, I really hope that we're able to identify funds or some sort of, adjustment in our operations in order to make sure that something like this doesn't go away, because I really do think that some of I'd love to see something like this for our abandoned vehicles, in my district, because really we got like 15 in each neighborhood, so, I only have so much staff, so I can't send my staff out here to report every single code violation that exists, and really, I think me and Councilmember Dewan would just spend our whole time on the City Council doing that. So, really hoping that we could take our lessons learned and come out with some sort of operation moving forward. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Dewan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, staff, for the report. Will the pilot program continue with the appropriate funding, I would imagine, and how much of funding you need to even expand it to further, like Councilmember Ortiz have talked about, code enforcement regarding abandoned vehicles?
I think that's a really good, interesting question, Councilmember. I think there's definitely opportunities to continue this. It's going to be a question of whether or not there are resources available to add this as a service, or whether we're willing to redeploy other services and say, we're not going to do these things, we're going to do this instead. That's going to be the balancing act. Obviously, that would go through the budget process, but I think that's why we're sort of trying to align a lot of this work. So we're starting with this report here today. There's sort of more information we're working on in the background around the vacant building and storefronts program. We'll have the study session coming to City Council in January. And then we'll do our annual report on code enforcement activities in April, which sort of neatly leads us all the way up to the budget process. So hopefully by the time we get there, we've kind of given you all the options and all the things that we can look at, and the different ways that we can move forward from there.
Thank you. And are you collaborating with our IT department? Eventually, what my understanding is, we're going to use one of the community service vehicle, or we can put a monitor on there that can identify vehicles that have been abandoned, potholes on the street, blights, graffitis, just as that vehicle automated drive around different neighborhoods and identify those things, and then just report it automatically without having, Councilor Ortiz staff or my staff to go out there and, punch up on the 311 app.
So those conversations are very sort of early on. I know we're sort of looking to get engaged with IT to sort of look at the opportunities. They have a number of different priorities that they're trying to meet. So certainly we'll be open to those conversations as they continue and work with our partners in IT to see what exists as it relates to code enforcement.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Looking for a motion for the item. Thank you.
To accept the report.
Second.
Thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, that motion carries. Thank you. And we can move on to item 4, and that's our San Jose Animal Care and Services Audit Report. And Joe is going to start, and I think Matt Lesh is going to be in the box as well. Right? Yeah.
Good afternoon, Council. Joe Royce, City Auditor. I'm here with Gitanjali Mandrakar to present our audit on animal care and services. Addressing capacity constraints and updating shelter protocols will help improve animal outcomes. Also in the box are Matt Lesh and Kiska Icard from the Public Works or Animal Care and Services. And behind me are Abele Obi, Michelle Malari, and Delnoza Kadoy-Berganova from my office, who worked on the report. Opened in 2004, San Jose Animal Care and Services, or ACS, is a full-service animal shelter providing services to San Jose, Cupertino, Saratoga, and Milpitas residents. The shelter provides various animal-related services such as animal licensing, adoptions, stray animal intake, medical services, and field response for animal-related issues in the community. ACS's 2024-25 adopted operating budget totals $15.4 million, which supports 94 positions, including veterinary staff, animal care attendants, administrative staff, and others. The overall budget and staffing has increased in recent years. In October 2023, the City Council directed an audit of ACS because of community concerns about shelter operations and the high number of animals in the shelter. Audit direction included such things as a comparison with industry standards for animal care and veterinary services, reporting of shelter data and metrics, relationships with rescue groups and volunteers, licensing and vaccinations, facility design, and services provided in neighboring jurisdictions. Overall, we had 8 findings, and the first finding is that the San Jose Animal Shelter is over capacity and needs a long-term strategy to address the demand for shelter space. We found that the on-site animal population has frequently exceeded the ACS housing capacity, which has impacted the shelter's ability to provide daily care to shelter animals and staff morale. Point-in-time counts in July and August showed that there were nearly 700 animals on site, while shelter capacity was roughly 500 animals. At the same time, the average length of stay for animals has increased in recent years. Due to capacity constraints, ACS has lacked space to prevent disease spread and promote animal welfare, and we noted that animals have been housed in areas not intended for long-term housing. Also, based on ACS estimates and industry standards for time spent on daily tasks, when over capacity, care attendants would not have enough time to meet the feeding and cleaning needs of all animals in the shelter. For these reasons, the shelter should develop a multi-pronged strategy to address the supply and demand for shelter space in the context of the overall budget and staff availability. As part of the strategy, ACS should continue to expand active population management efforts, including such actions as diverting kittens from intake, increasing opportunities for adoption or rescue, and expanding spay and neuter services, among others. In this finding, we have recommendations to determine the current shelter capacity and assess whether additional kennel space is required, reassessing the kitten nursery to divert kittens from the shelter, and formalizing pathway planning in the shelter and increase opportunities for adoptions, rescue, and spay and neuter services. The second finding is that ACS protocols, improvements in animal shelter protocols and record keeping will enhance shelter operations. So ACS protocols have generally aligned with Select Association of Shelter Veterinarians, or ASV guidelines. However, there are areas where ACS can update its internal protocols and ensure staff is appropriately trained. We found that the ACS manual is outdated and does not align with current actual shelter practices or the ASV guidelines, in particular around disease management and some daily care activities. We also noted that record keeping in the shelter was not always complete, making it difficult for supervisors to assess whether animals' daily needs are being met, and updated procedures to track and access supplies can improve inventory management. So we have recommendations in this finding to update the ACS manual to reflect ASV guidelines in various operational areas within the shelter, provide ongoing training on shelter protocols, record keeping, and inventory management, and defining supervisory responsibilities over shelter operations. The third finding is that additional disaggregation of metrics and better data management can enhance transparency of shelter operations. ACS makes a large amount of shelter data publicly available through the ACS dashboard and the city's open data portal. However, we found additional disaggregation of reported outcomes and other metrics can enhance transparency and provide information about what may be driving trends in the shelter outcomes. Two examples include tracking and reporting length of stay by average and median to help identify subsets of animals with longer shelter stays, or looking at disaggregated outcome data by intake categories to understand and help ACS management focus efforts on pathway planning on animals with lower live release rates. Also, better data management can improve data reliability and transparency for shelter operations. We have recommendations to provide additional disaggregated reporting on length of stay and shelter outcomes, and updating data management protocols, including assigning staff to manage data quality processes. Our fourth finding is that San Jose Animal Care and Services can enhance its engagement efforts with rescue groups to improve animal outcomes. Since fiscal year 18-19, the number of animals rescued by rescue groups has declined by 68%. In an auditor-conducted survey of rescue groups, we noted that 40% reported having capacity constraints of their own. However, only 40% rated their overall experience with ACS as good or excellent, and only 44% reported receiving sufficient information from ACS to make rescue decisions about animals. So we have recommendations in this finding to designate a single point of contact, coordinate with rescue groups, update communications to rescue groups to include complete and accurate information, and develop guidelines for the use of Gift and Guardian Angel Program, or GAP funds. For the last item, we noted that clear guidelines would help ensure donated funds are used consistently moving forward. Our fifth finding is that improvements in the volunteer program can aid in providing a coordinated approach to care at the shelter. Volunteers at ACS play a role in enhancing animal care through enrichment activities and assisting with other tasks. We found that 78% of respondents to an auditor-conducted survey reported they would recommend volunteering at ACS to a friend or family. However, current training requirements are lengthy, taking over 11 hours. However, not all trainings are relevant for all volunteers. Also, the current volunteer management software does not meet ACS or its volunteers' needs, particularly around tracking hours and scheduling shifts. So we have recommendations to assess and update training requirements, make non-essential trainings optional, as well as considering options for alternative volunteer management software solutions. Our sixth finding is that licensing compliance and access to equity-based services can be improved. The municipal code requires that all dogs and cats be licensed after being vaccinated for rabies, and the code also requires that the term of the license align with the length of the rabies certificate. We found that in March 2024, almost 60% of active animal licenses exceeded the validity of the animal's rabies certificate. We also found that the process for issuing new licenses and renewals is labor-intensive, takes a significant amount of administrative staff time. Also, other jurisdictions provide low-cost medical services to underserved communities to encourage licensing, and San Jose has not provided these regularly. While ACS does offer license fee exemptions to seniors, this needs to be done manually, and application forms are only available in English. So we have recommendations this finding to consider contracting out administration of licensing, aligning future license terms with rabies vaccination expiration dates, and increase the availability of low-cost medical services in the context of overall budget considerations. Finding 7, our 7th finding, is San Jose Animal Care and Services has begun implementing Maddie's Fund recommendations, but work still remains. So a 2022 consult report provided by the Maddie's Million Pet Challenge resulted in over 200 recommendations to improve shelter operations. We found that while ACS has made progress toward implementing some of the recommendations, work still remains. However, in some cases, recommendations may be outdated or not in line with current ACS practices. So we have recommendations to prioritize remaining relevant recommendations and designate an individual to monitor and track moving forward. Our last finding is that services to contract jurisdictions may exceed those provided to San Jose residents. ACS currently has contracts to provide animal care services to Cupertino, Milpitas, and Saratoga. We found that the agreements with neighboring jurisdictions provide for a higher level of service than for San Jose residents in some areas. For example, performance targets for priority 2 and 3 calls for service are higher for the contracted jurisdictions. We also noted that revenue calculations for Cupertino and Saratoga included cost elements that were not included in the Milpitas agreement. And we noted that tracking activity and costs moving forward can ensure consistency for future agreements and ensure they reflect the level of services provided. So we have recommendations here to consider aligning San Jose performance goals with contract jurisdictions and tracking activity and costs to determine if revenues reflect the level of services provided. Overall, there's 39 recommendations to improve services and care for animals at the San Jose Animal Care and Services. I want to thank the Department of Public Works and specifically the Animal Care and Services Division. I ask that you accept the report and cross-reference to the December 3rd meeting of the full City Council, and now I'll turn it over to, I believe, Matt for the administration's response.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman. Public Works would like to thank Joe and all of his team for their time, spending time with us and understanding the operations at the shelter and the care and issues going on with the animals in our community. We welcome their feedback and ideas and recommendations. We've accepted and agree with the recommendations that they have. Some are yellow, some are green. The only yellow recommendations are ones that might have a budgetary component to it, and as we get through implementing those recommendations, that's still, some of those might have some things we need to come to you for additional resources to complete as just a possibility. Most are scheduled for end of June this coming year in terms of implementing, or end of calendar year next year. As you note, it's a very robust list of things to get done. We'll have a very focused approach. Some need to get done right before kitten season, which typically kicks off in March, April timeframe. So we've staggered our focus so we can get done the things in a timely way that makes sense. But again, we welcome the feedback. We plan to implement all the recommendations, and we look forward to your recommendations as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with public comment.
We have 7 speaker cards. Can the following speakers, in no particular order, please sit in the front row marked reserved in blue? The first available speaker can walk up to the podium to speak. Rosario, Liz, Elena, Levi, Anna, Dina, and Lynn. Thank you.
Want to start? Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Rosario Concilio. I'm just a concerned citizen. As you're aware, the shelter has been in crisis for a number of years now, and I'd like to draw your attention to the memorandum dated on 4 November to the auditor, Mr. Royce. I'm looking at these timelines for completion of these recommendations, and I believe they're excessive. It's so long, and we've waited. The citizens of San Jose have waited so long for more help from the shelter. All right. Now, why do I say that? Let me give you just one example. That's all I have time for. is look at recommendation number 1. San Jose Animal Care Services should assess its shelter capacity and determine the number of animals the shelter can adequately care for using the holding capacity by species. The completion date on this is December 31st, 2025. That's really long. It really ignores the Maddie's report estimates, how you can easily calculate capacity. It's pretty simple to do this. This benchmark that Maddie's report has came up with is a product of several thousand evaluations of shelters across the country. It's really simple. It's 15 minutes for every animal, irrespective of species. All right, so you need 15 minutes of work for every animal that you have. For us, if it's 500 animals, it's 125 man-hours required for each day. All right, it's real simple to determine capacity. All you do is total up the number of available man-hours or work hours that you have for your staff for that day. If you're looking back and doing the audit, all you have to do is go back and look at the pay records and look at the hours, and you can determine whether for that day, whether you're over.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Liz Holtz. I'm sure most of you have heard from us before. We've been coming here for several years talking about this very subject. I would like to thank the auditor's staff for simply confirming everything that we have been telling council and the NSE committee, as well as shelter management, for more than 2 years. I would like to point out that in 1994, the TNR program at SJAC was created by John Ciccarelli. The current version went into place in 2010. During 2006 to 2013, the shelter, when it first opened and had just commenced TNR programs, averaged 10,000 cats a year. Currently, based on UC Davis population calculator being extremely generous with being minimal, saying that in 2019 we started with 10,000 breeding females. You are currently on track with 5% TNR included and death rates and everything else to have 3,590,000 feral cats that are unspayed, unneutered, and unvaccinated. Now, you look at the balloon in the unhealthy, untreatable animals. At the time that John Ciccarelli started the program, he's quoted in national studies saying how healthy the animals were and how surprised he was at that. For the last 3 years, most of the intake has been limited to sick, injured, and now pregnant cats, thank you. Pregnant cats is nice. Cats after the kittens are weaned would be even better, so we don't have to wait until.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, auditors, for all of your work. And as has been mentioned, I don't think there were any major surprises. And these are all things that we have known and identified and called out. And so I am going to leave all of those points. You are well aware of them. And I wanted to focus specifically on the position that is currently being filled at the shelter of the rescue coordinator and foster coordinator, which is one combined position. And if you read through the audit, take a look at the reliance or hope that will be placed on this position, as well as the volume and the number of animals that are going to be looking for rescue, as well as the animals looking for foster. And I would strongly recommend this not be a position all put on one person, because that is going to be a lot. And this is a position that should be split up into 2 different roles and it should either be rescue and foster or dog and cat. It is too much for one person. You are going to burn them out, and you're going to continue the cycle of having to start over and over and over with things. So please keep that in mind when making decisions and planning your budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Elena Gaffney. I'm from a small San Jose-based animal rescue organization. Thank you for audit. It was very informative. Confirmed, like everybody else said, confirmed a lot of concerns. I'm not going to repeat many concerns, but I would like to share a couple examples. This is a couple of dogs we just rescued from San Jose shelter. One was on a euthanasia list, and her description was posted. Melly is extremely fearful, displays fearful behavior, staff is unable to complete handling. Basically, dog was going to be euthanized. So when we came to the shelter, dog was actually snuggling with the staff member, and the minute after exiting the shelter, the dog jumps into the car. It's a completely friendly, social dog. So the second dog, a white one, came to foster home, filled with worms. I'm not showing picture here, but I can email to everybody. I checked documentation, deworming wasn't completed. Anyway, I'm not here to complain. We all know about challenges. We love our shelter. We really would like to work with administration. You've been hearing from a lot of us, and there are multiple reasons for this. We're grateful for suggestion to create the public commission. We've compiled a list of interested persons, and we really would like to be able to share concerns, suggestions, trends that we observe. A lot of us are engineers, and a lot of us also have a lot of experiences in managing different type of operations. And we would really like to collaborate. We respect and love everybody who cares for our animals. Please, let's do this together, and let's get this shelter on track.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you to the audit team for a thorough analysis and report. However, the proposed year-long timeline for implementing most of the report's recommendation is actually unacceptable. Immediate action is necessary. So many of the issues could be fixed in the short term by strong leadership. There is no excuse not to enforce basic sanitation procedures now, which is part of finding number 2. Panluke and ringworm cross-contamination is widespread. Both lead to time and resource-intensive treatments, which further strains an already overburdened system. Basic PPE protocols are still not followed or enforced for staff or volunteers. Weeks after an all-staff training day that closed the shelter, I watched a medical staff person give vaccine and flea treatments without gloves, an ACA feeding kittens without gloves, and an adoption counselor handling kittens with no gloves before taking this kitten to meet potential adopters. This is all in one day in one adoption room. This was not in this isolated instance. It's an everyday reality that I see as a volunteer. Days later, a kitten from that same adoption room was diagnosed with ringworm. How many staff and volunteers handled this kitten without PPE before touching other animals? So remember those cute kittens that were brought to the rotunda at the end of October? Guess what? They had ringworm too. Hopefully nobody touched these kittens. Management has claimed that ringworm is widespread in the incoming cat population. This makes the failure to enforce sanitary procedures even more egregious. It defies logic. There is no reason not to take action now on many of the issues reported for years. Animals are suffering and dying, and people working and volunteering at the shelter are also suffering. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name's Anna Spear, and I want to first of all thank Mr. Royce and his team for a great audit. Many of these items were brought to the city manager's attention as well as leadership at the shelter over the last 2 years. As a resident and taxpayer of the city of San Jose, I'm concerned with the many requests for additional funding in the response from the shelter management or shelter leadership. The city has been extremely generous in doubling their budget and their staffing. I find it very difficult to believe that they still are performing so poorly. That One is an improvement, as has already been said, is the hiring of a rescue foster coordinator that has been open that was approved in July 1, and many interviews have already happened. 5 months later, we still don't have that position filled. We also have a request from the leadership to get a second social media person instead of a second rescue coordinator, which actually would help animals get out in a much more expedient way. I also would like to see that, hopefully, that they would update and implement the recommendation on the audit to develop communication and protocol updates, to update the rescue group contacts before December 2025. This was something that last year at this meeting, they said they were going to pivot and go back to contacting rescues. Why has not been done yet? Kitten season starts March of 2025. So with that said, we have nobody in management or leadership that has any education or training as a shelter manager, especially in in operations. So.
Thank you. Next speaker, we have one additional card for Christine.
Hi, I wrote a lot here, but I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet here. There's a saying that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm sorry to say, I think it's broke, and I think it's about time we fix it. This audit shows pretty widespread mismanagement and a lack of leadership. I mean, we're talking, besides the national problems with, animals and overpopulation, we're talking about lack of proper staff training, lack of proper record keeping, lack of basic sanitation. Like, these are basic management issues, and this is not your job as city council to fix, it's theirs, right? Like, that's what they're paid to do, to be managers and manage. This isn't even like shelter specific, this is management for any manager in any role. I'm glad that this audit came out, and it charts a good path forward for them. I'm worried that as long as the captain of the ship keeps spinning that wheel, it doesn't matter what our chart forward is, we're just going to keep spinning in circles. So they gave us a 6-month timeline. I hope that you guys really hammer that these things need to get done, and if they don't, it's time to start holding management accountable. So I'm going to stop there. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, I just have a question, something that I noticed on the audit. Hold on, I had it typed out, I'm so sorry. I want to know if the auditors took into account the ratio of animals per staff person, like animals per veterinarian, how many animals per veterinarian, how many animals per kennel attendant. There's a standard out there, I believe, reading the Long Beach animal shelter standard, it's, I think, 34 to 175 animals per veterinarian. San Jose is listed as 300 animals per veterinarian. And as you can imagine, going down the line, that number stays much higher than the standard number. I don't see anything about that in the audit, and just was wondering if it was accounted or looked at, and if not, I think it should be. That's it.
Thank you. Back to the committee.
Thank you. Would you like to address that question, Joe?
Yes, sure. So the question of staffing, we use the National Animal Care and Control Association guidelines on kennel staffing standards, which I believe gets at that what a different commenter talked about, the 15 minutes for daily care, and we were using that to understand whether there was sufficient staff to handle the volume of animals, and we found no, they did not. And so that was the standard we were using. I know that's one of the things that needs to be considered in the finding when we're looking at the capacity for care overall in the shelter. There's the physical space, there's the staffing, staffing resources using those standards, and then basically design within the shelter. So those are the sort of things that we'd be looking at in there. So that's the standard we were using, as opposed to what, per animals per, we were using this, the National Animal Care and Control Association's guidelines.
Okay, thank you. And Matt, can you address the question about the rescue and foster staff person?
The position, we didn't get a position added this fiscal year. There were specific dollars were allocated as non-personal dollars. We took action in September timeframe to add an overstrength position using some non-personal funding. So we had to switch it into personnel funding. It's, so we created an overstrength position for this year in around September, October, and have recruited, and we've not completed that recruitment yet. It should be fairly shortly done.
So is that for an additional person or for one person?
It's an additional, well, it's one person rescue and foster focus as opposed to just the rescue, the coordinators across the board doing it in addition to that, yes. So the way we structured it, this person would be responsible as kind of, that's their focus only, whereas the other coordinators have animal care attendants and everybody else and rescue bits. And so the idea is that the other coordinators would not lose rescue coordination responsibility, but this person would be primary. And so it's not just a single person doing this overall. The whole team is focused on that, the supervisors and management as well, but this person is a designated resource for foster because we have a very large foster participation right now in addition to the rescue needs as well.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And then in terms of rescue partners, I know this was something we had discussed about a year ago, maybe more, about additional outreach to rescue partners and really improving those relationships. I know that Angel was involved in some of those discussions. Can you talk about where that process is right now and kind of how it went?
So there was, the first effort, like before last fiscal year, was about all animal advocates kind of presenting information and sharing with us, and it got really hard to manage all the different communities of interest, and so we broke them down into areas of focus, so rescues in general, and so Kiska's had roughly quarterly meetings with rescues to reach out what things we can improve and so forth, and so some of those have seen manifested changes. We're building out things in relation to that. There's things that Joe obviously sees as areas to continue to improve. And this rescue coordinator, plus some of these focus recommendations, we think we'll get, plus that community action committee focus on how, like, do we make sure do we coordinate right? Because there's no one way to communicate with rescues that for each individual rescue, it's a little different. And so sometimes we miss the mark with one, but try to get it better with the other. And so it's a continually learning process that the staff is on. So we'll be having, how close are we on the rescue webpage? Kiska? We're close. So things like that. We're a specific rescue webpage and a resource that they can log into to get some specific information. It's in flight right now. It just wasn't prime time for like Joe to look at yet, or even to kind of evaluate. But we are continually trying to improve and meet them where their needs are. It's just the animals that we're trying to focus with rescue are very challenging animals that are very sick, or have lots of behavior issues, or very scared and lots of involvement. So it's a continuing process.
Okay, Joe, would you like to comment on
that? So going back to what I described earlier, so when we were surveying rescues, the things that, the two things in the reflects in our recommendations, having that point of contact or point of contact, so they have, you know, those protocols, who do they talk to, when do they expect a response, that's what's kind of built in our recommendation. And then, which I think Matt's getting at, that providing information to the rescue groups so they have sufficient information to make rescue decisions. That was something that was noted by nearly half of the respondents to our survey. They didn't get the information, they didn't know, they didn't get the health assessments or the behavioral assessments, so they couldn't make decisions. So having better information for the rescue groups, having someone they can turn to, hopefully will and then with those other efforts Matt's talking about, can rebuild that relationship, because as I mentioned in the talking points, the number of rescues dropped pretty significantly over the last 5 or 6 years, and we need to kind of build that back up. Thank you.
And to the question that, I want to thank all the commenters for coming. I know I've also received emails from some people, and they're parts of my questions. In terms of having someone in charge of the shelter who's had shelter experience, has there been a thought about bringing someone on? I know that we've had some leadership challenges in Public Works for being in charge of the shelter, and so I'm wondering if bringing in someone from the outside might be called for at this point.
So, in terms of specific leadership, in terms of specific shelter experience, there aren't many large shelters like ours, open intake shelters, that have the volume that we have. And so the reservoir of trained staff available to do this is not a massive resource. We have brought some from outside, like Kiska and some of our supervisors. We've trained and promoted from within as well, who have history with our organization. And so we've tried to balance out with some from outside and some from inside, and promoting from within, that know the culture of the organization, of the city organization, not just the shelter. And so, and we get, for example, they do have outreach, like consultant experience, where they reach out on particular types of traits, whether it's evaluating our behavior evaluation protocols. They bring in experts and evaluate what we're doing, critique it, and improve it. And so there are specific things that they're doing in terms of overall leadership. Right now, I don't think there's an active thing that we should do to change or bring in an additional resource above what we have now, but we'll continue to evaluate that.
Okay. And we had, I think about a year ago, maybe it was in last year's budget instead of this year's budget, we had provided some seed money for starting up an animal care foundation for the city. Where is that in the process?
That has not yet been begun, and so Angel and I have been talking about what strategy we want on that. Quite frankly, with the volume of animals that we've had, it's not been our area of focus right now, and so we will. So the city manager has challenged me with this opportunity as well to get that moving, and so she's asked me to get constructive direction on it by the end of the fiscal year.
Can you elaborate, please?
She asked me to get going.
What?
I know you want me to talk directly like I normally do. She asked me to get going and get something to move with that money by the end of the fiscal year, and I said I will endeavor to do so.
All right. Thank you. That's good to know. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues, but I'd like to ask the maker of the motion, in addition to the staff recommendation for accepting and cross-referencing the report, to add on that when the report gets cross-referenced to December 3rd, Matt, will you be able to come with a work plan with priorities, since this is, I know a year seems like a long time for all of this, but these are a lot of recommendations and there's a lot of work behind that. Can you come to us on December 3rd with a work plan with the priorities on how you're going to get these things done in a year? Some of which are in 6 months, but how that's actually going to happen, that's number one. And then number two, a staffing chart for the Animal Care and Services Division.
The actual org chart with names, or because there is an org chart generally structured in the audit report itself.
Thank you. Can you put it in the slides then for us?
Yeah.
It would be helpful, and a star if they're are open positions?
There's only a few open positions in the animal care services. It is the priority of the department to fill those, even with what you heard earlier about the massive capital program that we run. All of our hiring is at, we have a 9% vacancy rate in the department as we speak. So we've been hiring, and animal care and services only has a few vacancies at this point. So happy to start and indicate all the vacancies or what positions they are and when they get filled. In terms of the detail of the work plan, part of it is I was trying to get direction here today and waiting to see what December 3rd, if there's any additional direction, because I have a rough game plan in my head. The engineer in me has the rough game plan already. And you can see by the staggered dates is roughly how I was planning to lay them out. And obviously, if there's work that will be completed before then, some of that is just reporting out in December the status of them, and not that work would only be done and won't be completed until December 30th. And so I appreciate the opportunity to lay out my thought process. Part of it was the dates by which I put the end dates on them.
Yeah.
Some of them take a little bit. Some of them I'm waiting to the Community Action Committee to have some time together to come up with proactive answers, because many of those are community things, not just San Jose shelter things that need to get some resolution.
Understand, but then there's more to that work plan in terms of what the engagement looks like, and there's timing on that.
Yes, ma'am.
So it would just be very helpful.
I'll provide a supplemental memo before for the December 3rd meeting.
Perfect. And then in addition to those requests for the motion, I'd also like a request to bring a progress report back to NSC in April. I know I won't be here, but that would give you 6 months, and so we can see if you're on track to meet it's 6 months.
June? June is 6 months. It'd be 4 months in, and I'm not trying to critique, but it'll only be 4 months
We're
in.
in November right now.
Right.
December, January, February, March,
Understood.
April.
You want an
Okay.
April briefing?
But I said April so that you'd have still 2 months to get to your June stuff.
Got it.
To make sure that's all
Yes, ma'am.
on track.
April it is.
Okay. So those are my requests. Thank you.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? I'll second. I have a couple more questions, but I'll take them offline to give my colleagues a chance. Councilmember Dewan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, staff. I know that the ACS been what you call reactive, and thank you, Joe, for the recommendations, right? The 39 recommendation, and now we kind of understand where we're at, what type of mistakes that we need to fix, and I know that part of your recommendation is having Community Action Committee to assist with all these solutions, right? And I think it's important that we include a lot of our constituent out here who are very compassionate and care about our animals to be part of the team. I do have a few questions for you. And first of all, I just want to say, with the funding, with the lack of resource, I just want to say thank you for doing the best you can at this point. I know that there's always complication in hiring and maintaining with the plethora or influx of animals, both cats and dogs and kittens and puppies and rabbits and so on. And I know that with some of the problem come in is that there's always turnover from our volunteers, staff, and so on. And one of my concern is part of the training took, I believe, is like 45 days before a volunteer can be accepted into your program. I think we need to use a lot of that resource to supplement what we have right now because of our staffing and the influx of animals. What are your plans to reduce that timeline in order to get our volunteer? Because one of my staff wanted to volunteer with, the ACS, and yet, the 45 days, it was a really elongated process.
45 days of training? I don't think there's 45 days of training. I think there are definitely people that put an application in, it takes a period of time. So when I checked in with our volunteer coordinator a couple months ago, and I said, what's your backlog of applicants? Said at that time he had like 300 applicants in the portal in terms of applications of people wanting, and so he needed to go through them and vet them. And so the question is, how many can he bring in any given week? And the question at that time, it was 25 a week that he could handle, bringing them on board, training them, getting them through the other training and everything else. So if you look at 25 a week and there's 300 in the portal, there's definitely, and so there's a lot. The way I look at it, it is fantastic that our community is motivated to try to help us. And the software that we're using, as noted in the report, is a challenge in terms of being able to communicate with them. This is where you're at, and just kind of their status and progress on that. It's definitely a challenge. As Joe noted, I should say, the city auditor noted in the audit that perhaps we should review the trainings that we're requiring to make sure that those are the right amounts that are needed for the task this person is doing and isn't too much. And so that's a great challenge to us, so we should evaluate those. And so I don't know the target timeline from when an applicant gets in there when we have this vast number, because we can't bring all of them on all at one time, orient them, get them ready, make sure that they're safe. And so that's that challenge. So that's why I think the way that the auditor broke it down is focus on making sure you have the most efficient, and they only need to get the trainings to perform the tasks that they're doing so we can safely get them on board. And by the way, your software is not very fun.
Well, I understand we're not asking to bring all 300 on board in the same day. I think we can have training, and then according to the schedule and the availability of the volunteers. So we can do shift, days, week, month, and I think what I see is I hear you regarding the 25 volunteers per day. Right now, how many volunteers we have per day? 25?
No.
Max?
No, what I was saying is they can bring on 25 new volunteers a week, get them all trained, taught, and get them in ready to use. And so that's all the variant ones that we can bring on from that portal. And it's not just 300 the static, it keeps piling in terms of the backlog. And so it's been a kind of constant flow of 200 to 300 volunteers in the queue, and we keep bringing them on board. Kiska, can you talk about the number of volunteers we typically have on site any given day?
I think that 25 is an accurate estimate of the number of volunteers that we have coming in every day to walk dogs, socialize cats, assist with adoptions. That's, I think, a fair estimate. But as Matt says, without the software to accurately be able to track it, that's my best guesstimate.
Thank you. And do we have any implementation on having a protocol to euthanize criteria for animals?
We do have a protocol, and we have an updated draft that we're finalizing. So it is based on criteria, and that criteria is based on the animal's condition. And we have a matrix that was developed by the community We Care Alliance. It was a group of shelters prior to me starting over 2.5 years ago. And so for every condition that an animal may have, it's one of 4 categories: that they're healthy, that they're treatable, rehabilitatable. That means that we can cure the condition. Treatable, manageable are things that you can't cure, but the animals can live a good quality of life, and then unhealthy and untreatable. And we really seek to only euthanize those animals that are unhealthy and untreatable.
Thank you. And then what measure will you ensure that data remain accurate in your Chameleon system?
So Chameleon is another one so this is what I asked way back in one of my prior roles in the department. Is there any other software that runs shelter operations that we can use? And they're really, one software is good at one part of the operation, say medical, another one's good at sheltering, and so there's not one good software. And so Chameleon is kind of the best in class that we can use right now, and it has its challenges and a little bit cumbersome. And so we do everything we can to make sure that staff knows how to, has the right information how to, and then hold them accountable. Several of the recommendations have to do about telling us, making sure that the procedures that you're writing up have that data completion component into it, and then someone going through with the responsibility of auditing to make sure that that is done. And so that's why I really like the way the auditor framed the recommendation. It gives us the right place to say, yes, fix that protocol, procedure, whatever it is, but have a data completion component into it, and then have the responsibility of who's supposed to make sure that that data is input correctly. So there's no way to ensure that that happens, but we have committed to putting that into our procedures and policies.
Is the majority of the animals that go through, example, dogs and cats, do they have what you call the chip that allow for tracking and the medical histories and what been given, or not?
So all animals, when they leave animal care and services, are microchipped. If they're not microchipped when they come in, and every animal that comes in, we scan them to see if there is a microchip, and if there is, we call a chip company. There's not across the board a standard about what information is uploaded, but we can see where the chip has been implanted, if it was implanted at another shelter, if it was implanted at a veterinary hospital, but that certainly is something that every animal that leaves the shelter is chipped, but it's also a good community reminder to make sure that your information is updated, because oftentimes when we call the microchip company and they give us a phone number, it might be outdated. We'll send letters only to get those returned. So community PSA, make sure your animal's microchip information is current.
All right, well, thank you very much. I have like 10 more questions, but I'm running out of time, so I want to give my colleagues opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ortiz?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I just want to take a moment to thank our City Auditor's Office and just audit staff for your thorough work and thoughtful work on this report. I think this report highlights both the strengths and the challenges our animal shelter faces, and it's clear that our shelter staff are working incredibly hard under difficult conditions, and they're doing the best to provide care and services for the animals and the community despite consistently operating over capacity. And I want to acknowledge the immense pressure that they are under. But as the audit points out, we still have significant work ahead of us. The findings reveal that despite the dedication of our staff and leadership, the shelter's resources, protocols, and capacity constraints are hindering our ability to provide the level of care and operational efficiency that both our animals and our community deserve. And overcrowding has made it challenging to deliver consistent daily care, and in some areas, our practices need to be updated to meet modern standards. With that being said, I do have some questions. On page 64 of the report, it states that the city engaged with rescue groups through a shelter working group in 2023. However, the meetings were discontinued sometime in 2024. Wanted to hear if we could just have somebody speak to why those meetings were discontinued and how will the new Community Action Committee will form to ensure the rescue partners feel heard and that the rescue information will be included in the survey results.
Thank you, Councilmember. The larger group was, the reason why it was disbanded was because we wanted to focus on the particular areas of animal trappers have different needs than rescues versus cats versus dogs, and so we tried to focus our resources to help them and have focused meetings. And so Kiska's had several quarterly meetings with different affinity, we'll call them affinity groups, whatever group that in terms of the animal care industry or advocates. And so we wanted to focus them on the areas that they had needs, because they were just, the group was, it's not unwieldy, it was just hard to get things moving because they had contrary areas that they wanted to focus on. And so this gave us an opportunity to be more focused and be more efficient with both their time and with staff's time to really kind of cater towards those specific needs. That was the intent. The Community Action Committee, as I'm proposing it, is to focus on the specific recommendations here. Not anything broader than that right now, and understand, like, because these things are going to take a bunch of work. Those 4 recommendations that I listed there, they're, as part of this audit, they're a truckload of work that need to get done. It's a measurement that engineers use, sorry about that. And so it's a truckload. So it's a load of work. And so, but have this focused conversation, because these really are community problems we're trying to solve. And so to get the community to focus on those specific things. KISCA should still be having quarterly meetings with these different groups, and that's what I would expect to do in addition to the Community Action Committee. And so those would continue, this Community Action Committee would not be in place of that.
Okay, so then, what I just heard, and I just want to confirm for the record, so there will be a continuation of these meetings with the rescue community?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Councilman, I want to add something to that, because I think we need to address this, and it's kind of the elephant in the room, right? Over the last 2 years, there was a significant shift away from the use of rescues to adoptions. And this is a shelter that historically has been an almost rescue type of shelter, right? That created a lot of tension. That created a lot of animosity. And rightly so, right, with different stakeholders that have been involved. If we're going to move forward, I really do think that the recommendation to convene this, to kind of renew this Community Action Committee to focus specifically on this is the right approach. I also feel that what we'll need to integrate into that is a little bit of front-end mediation, because the reality is that we need both. We can't just be a full-blown rescue shelter. We can't just be a full-blown adoption shelter. We need both, right? And if you take a look at our shelter community representation, the community has really stepped up in a huge way around adoptions, right? And that doesn't mean that rescues are less important. So what we're going to have to do is, when we hit the reset button, and I really liked and I may mispronounce her name, but I believe it was Eliana, and forgive me if if I'm mispronouncing your name, but she said, she wants to work in collaboration with respect and love. I think, there's a lot of tension and animosity based on past situations, and I think if we're going to truly get on the same page and implement this in a effective manner in the best interest of the animals under our care, we're going to have to cross that bridge, pull out the olive branches, and get people working together once again. Everybody that spoke today, I know they're here for a reason, and they're driven by the passion that they have. Similarly, our staff shows up to work in the same way, right? So it's not like one is right, one is wrong, one is good, one is bad. So anyway, I wanted to publicly say that, because I do think that we're going to need to address that dynamic if we're going to be successful. Otherwise, we're going to be fighting against ourselves, and we'll be here next year talking about the same thing.
Well, thank you, Angel. I appreciate that statement coming from senior leadership of the city, and I think that's what I hear the public saying as well. I don't think anybody's saying it needs to all be rescue or vice versa. We just want to make sure everybody's included and able to provide input on the work of the city. But thank you for that. So as we were just talking about rescues, some rescue organizations have reached out to my office to inquire about the live release rates. Could you explain why live release rates, especially for cats, have declined? Is this in relation to the unhealthy, untreatable intake condition of the animals, or what else could be the cause? I'm a cat guy, by the way. So be careful.
So as noted in the audit, the number of animals that we are receiving that are unhealthy and untreatable have really increased over the last several years. And those are the ones that have the illnesses that cannot be cured, and they are have the worst prognosis, so to speak. So it tends to reason that with, I think it was a 29% increase in unhealthy and untreatable animals this last fiscal year as compared to 2018, 2019. So it stands to reason that those being the ones that are the most critical have less chance of survival. So it is absolutely related to the unhealthy and untreatable treatable. And also, as we in the past had sent so many animals to rescue, and I really want to thank our rescue partners. They take a lot of the critical animals, the ones that we just don't have the capacity to help. When they were taking so many underage and neonatal kittens, we didn't know what the final outcome of those animals were going to be, right? They were counted as a live release because they got transferred out, but what happened after that, we don't know. So I think that that also contributes to the decrease in the live release rate because we were sending those animals to rescue. That counts as a live release rate, but ultimately these are, again, are the most fragile animals that come in and into our care. And looking at the stats, and I'm a trends person, over the last year, our intake rate has continued to increase, particularly for cats and kittens. So last year we took in an additional 30%, our kitten intake rate rose by 30%. Versus the previous year. And again, majority of those are neonates, underage kittens that really need a lot of help.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. I see I have very limited time left, so just one real quick question before I pass on. Do we have OKRs, so objectives or measured key results for the leadership team at the Animal Service Center?
So, thanks for the question. So I'm one of the few department directors that has their divisions producing OKRs per division, which are 12 for Public Works, plus some more small subsidiary groups that I focus on. At a period of time in March, I didn't ask ACS to produce them. And the reason why is because one of our staff members had to go on medical leave, and it was and then so a lot of people had to step up into different roles. And so, and in that, I had to step in to understand and have almost daily conversations with shelter operations staff. And so I thought it was prudent to take that just a little bit of weight off in terms of what they had to do because I'd be so close to them anyways. I also meet with shelter leadership at least weekly, the whole team, getting a briefing like I do with all of my other divisions to get an understanding of what the real-time information of the things that they were achieving, blockers and challenges to what they do, so the nuts and bolts of what OKRs are. Chances are most people don't even know what OKRs are and how to drive them, and so we use them to hold people accountable. You will see as the staff and the leadership team is back in place now, and through great blessings that Jay is back to health and back with us, and so we'll be resuming them in 2025, and you could bet that these 39 recommendations will find nice square places on those slides, and you'll have OKRs that are produced in 2025. It was a burden that I lifted a little bit, and you will be having them again in 2025. I'll be happy to share them with you because we posted them on our website, unlike most other people. So.
Great. Just, some final words. Just want to thank, as I mentioned, the staff at, the animal shelter, and as well as our advocates who've come here to share their voice and their concern and passion. I think everybody here wants the same thing. We want, what's best for our animals, our furry friends, and our community. And I have confidence that we'll move in the new direction thanks to the leadership of the auditor and the leadership of the department. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Before you leave, we need to vote because we will lose quorum.
That's right.
And so if you don't mind, Councilmember Candelas, we'll vote first and then we'll go to your comments. I hope that's all right. I know it's a little unorthodox.
Okay.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yes. All right, so that motion carries, but you're not done because Councilmember Candelas still has some questions. You may go.
Oh, okay.
My comments were going to be really brief, just based on a lot of the comments that my colleagues have made. I did want to just talk about 3 areas. One is the daily shelter operations and the daily protocols for medical care and daily care practices and the improvements for that. I know that is going to be critical in order to see the well-being of our of animals improve. And I know just as much as we have, passionate folks here on the dais and people who can't make it here on a Thursday afternoon, we have folks in our administration who deeply care about our four-legged friends. But I think an organization that is well run, and I think that's the foundation of proper care, and making sure that we see through the recommendations within the audit, I think are going to be critical to that. And I know there's a lot of target dates for December that a lot of folks had concern over, and having that public administration background, a grad school advisor always told me this: it's under promise, over deliver. And so I understand why the department and why the administration is setting a target for December of 2025, because it seems pretty far off, and to folks' frustration, we want to see things sooner, because obviously animals' lives are at stake. But I also understand the paradox of not saying, hey, we can get this done next week, because if you can't deliver that as staff, is a disservice not just to you and the profession and running our city, but it's a disservice to the community. And so I hope that the timelines that we have in place are not just an arbitrary number, but they're tangible, and that we can actually achieve them. So we actually sitting here in December of next year, not in January or February of 2026, March of 2026. Hopefully you see where I'm going with that.
I understand. There is one recommendation. I put June 30, 2026, just for clarity.
Yeah, no,
there's only the one. All the rest of them I put as a timeline of next year, which I would challenge to most other audits of this volume go years with implementing them. So this is a robust, aggressive attack on all of these issues that I take very seriously, and I will hold all of our staff to the standard of producing on it, and I will support them to make them happen.
And I have no doubts, but I do want to be I want to make sure that we, that's why I was happy to support the motion recommendation to have a report back to committee in April or 6 months, or depending on how you name it, the first quarter, the second quarter.
It will be April.
Yes, in April of next year to hopefully be on target for those June deadlines that we do have. And then lastly, I wanted to quickly ask about the Maddie report, and in the audit, we said there was the final report included recommendations ranging from shelter operation intakes and outcomes to medical infectious diseases. How much of those audit recommendations from the Maddie report in 2022, I wasn't here, were we actually able to implement of that report?
So as the auditor noted, it's they're not as, so one of the things I appreciate about the auditor's recommendations, you pretty clearly say, do this, this is what you should do, and you can understand what you're supposed to deliver. The Maddie's Fund consult isn't written nearly as clearly as that, do this. But there's lots of recommendations, and as they noted in the report, there's 250 of them. So there's not, and you should consider doing this, and then, or things that you need to do that then we need to continually do. We might have slipped, and we need to bring that practice back. And so it's pretty hard to measure exactly, of the 250, exactly how many are done. We reported last year that at our annual report, and we'll make sure that we have it clear in next month's annual report. So we'll be back here again next month of how many are completed. I think it was 9 out of 21 categories of recommendations were complete as of last year.
Got it, because even in the presentation, we saw a slide that said in some cases the recommendations were outdated or not in line with current
Correct.
ACS.
Some of them don't comply with the American ASV guidelines.
Right, and so what I guess maybe just a little bit more precise, that'd be helpful. Thank you. And that's it. Those are my comments. I told you they were brief. Thank you.
Great. All right, thank you, and I'm sure we will have more comments and questions on December 3rd when it comes back to the full council. With that, we are at open forum.
There is no public comment.
Okay, great. So we are adjourned at 3:57 p.m.